If you want to know how to make different shapes out of wire, I'm going to show you how to make unique hoops. One of my go-to style of earrings right now is just a classic hoop without ear wires. And they're made out of 20 gauge wire, and I thought that all of you would like to learn how to make those. Also, I wanted to show you how to make an oval style and a square style and a star style. They're all really similar and just really lightweight and fun to wear. Let's go over the tools and supplies we'll need for this project. We're going to need 20 gauge wire. This is German style half hard round wire, flat nose plier. I like to have a nylon wire straightening plier with me, a round nose plier, a flush cutter. Also, if you don't want to use your round nose plier, you can use a one-step looper. You're going to need a chasing hammer and a bench block, a couple of mandrels. This is my round and oval mandrel. All right, so let's start with the classic hoop. You're going to need something round, and this is my round mandrel. And I'm just going to take a permanent marker and mark on it where I want my hoop to be. So depending on the size of the hoop, just make a mark. Now grab your 20 gauge wire and pull out a length. Cut about a foot of wire with your flush cutter. And first, before we wrap it around the mandrel, we're going to make a loop. And I like to use my one-step looper here just because it's fast and consistent. And all you do is put the end of your wire into the tool, under the peg through the hole, and squeeze. So it makes a perfect little loop. Now we're going to wrap the wire around the marked position on the mandrel. So just hold that looped part, I have that under my finger, and just wrap it straight around. And I even start to do a little hammering here. I'm going to grab my chasing hammer. And this is basically going to start to give the wire its shape and to make it work harden and to make it just more stable for your design. Once you hammer it just a little bit, you can see that it has a basic circular form, and you can trim off a decent portion of that because now we're going to make our little tail that's going to hold it into our ear. So stick the tail through the little hoop, the loop on the end, and then put this back on your mandrel. And wherever your mark is, just kind of squeeze the whole hoop together so it's nice and tight. Pull the tail through, and with our flat nose plier, we're going to make a bend. Like that. So now we can hammer it a little bit more. We're going to just work our way around the whole piece without hammering the part that'll go in our ear, which is right here. So just give it a little tap. This is plated wire, so just be careful. If you have sterling silver wire, it's great to use, or gold-filled wire is awesome too. This will make it a little bit bigger, but that's okay as long as both of your hoops are the same size. Okay, now you can take it off of your mandrel. And trim the little tail off. I like to leave about 3/16 of an inch. And then if you need to, you can straighten that tail up just a little. And that's the part that will go in your ear. So if you have a file or a wire rounder, you can use that then. And then another little step is to lay it flat on your bench block. and then hammer it this way as well, just so it keeps its shape. Flip it over if you want, just very gently. Make sure you don't hammer the loop. And so that's how I make my hoops. Now I'm going to show you how I make my oval hoops. I have my oval mandrel here, and just a note, you can see that it's oval because the top is an oval. And I'm going to make a little mark, stick it through the tool, and squeeze. So we're going to wrap it around our mandrel. And just keep the loop off center, and just give it a few little taps. And now you can trim quite a bit off of that, just because it's going to actually be about that big when you're finished. Stick the tail through here and put it back on your mandrel. And with your flat nose plier, give it a nice strong bend. Okay, now I'll take it off of our mandrel and trim off that tail, same as the circular hoop. And now I'm going to lay it flat on my bench block. And that's how I make my oval. Let's move on to the square hoop. That's really, really easy. And I actually used a ruler as my measuring device, my mandrel in a way. So cut about another foot of 20-gauge wire. Straighten it out if you need to, just a little bit, just like the others. Make sure it's nice and closed. Grab your ruler or measuring tool. And I'm just gonna hold it with the loop just barely coming up over the edge. And then I'm gonna make a really strong 90-degree bend. Like that. Okay, and just do that 2 more times. So now I'm going to trim off a lot of this and stick the tail through the loop. And with my flat nose plier, I'm going to just bend this piece up where it goes through the loop. Give it a little crook. And then trim that off. And then grab my bench block and hammer it out. And I like to start on the corners with this and just gently let this part hang over so you don't hammer it on accident. And if you need to, I don't know if you can see that this is a little bit bent right here. You can grab your flat nose plier and just walk it up and down the sides to get them nice and straight. Okay, so that's how I make my squares. And let's move on to the star. Okay, so this star is really, really fun to make, and I'm actually going to be using my plier as my measuring device. Another thing I wanted to mention before we start is that the loop is almost halfway up one of the points. So keep that in mind. We're still going to start with making that little loop and go down this way, but just know that that's not going to be at the very point. It's going to come down a little bit. So cut about 1.5 feet of 20 gauge wire. Make a loop on the end. And just give it a little squeeze. The measurement I'm going to be using is from here to here. Basically, that's going to be my measuring device. And you can see on this star, that's exactly the length of each side. And like I said, the little loop is almost halfway up the point. So we're going to start here. This is how I make my first bend. Put it halfway in your flat nose plier. And bend it 90 degrees. Take it out of your plier. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using this measurement, and I'm going to be using my finger to kind of mark that on the other side, if that makes sense. So measure, hold the place, grab your plier, make a bend. And we're going to repeat that over and over, except we're going to this time go out. Boom. So that's 1 point. Whoops. And I'm going to start to walk it together. And just repeat this a few more times. Okay, so we only have 1 point left. Measure here. Okay. So that's pretty much the shape of our star here. And now we can trim off a lot of this tail just so it's more manageable. So stick it through the little loop and just, you're just gonna kind of use your hand to just kind of open and close. You can kind of eyeball it and see what you need to do to make the star. Grab a flat nose plier. I'm actually gonna take it out of that loop for now and make a bend. And then trim that little tail off just like all the others. And now the last step is to grab our bench block and our hammer. And this is the last point where you can really kind of mess with the shape. Like while you're hammering, if you want, you can do the whole flat nose plier, walk it around, make them straight again trick that I like to do. But just take your time. Really reinforce those bends. And just the only thing is make sure that you don't hammer up here. Okay, so that's how you make the little star hoop. So here's what they look like on. I have in the star, And the little loop is in the back, so the wire actually just goes through your ear and you don't have to have an ear wire. Let's go back over the tools and supplies we used for this project. We used 20 gauge wire. This is German style half hard round wire. Any 20 gauge would work as long as you don't hammer it too much. A bench block, a domed chasing hammer, a permanent marker, a flush cutter, a ruler if you need it, a one-step looper or a round nose plier, a flat nose plier, and a nylon straightening plier. And our round and oval mandrels. If you need to pick up any of the tools or supplies we used today, check out the links in the description below. What shapes would you make out of your wire? Let us know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And now that you know how to make geometric hoops out of wire, you can say, I made this.